Welcome, dear listeners, to another descent into the abyss on the shadow behind you. I am your guide through the veiled corridors of history, where the past doesn't merely whisper. It claws at the edges of your sanity, pulling you into its cold embrace. Tonight, we venture into the shadowed hollows of 1888 Kentucky, a land where the rolling bluegrass hides secrets as dark as the coal veins snaking beneath the earth. Imagine, if you will, the flickering light of a lone lantern swinging from the porch of a weathered inn, its glow barely piercing the thick fog that rolls down from the Appalachian foothills. The air is heavy with the scent of wood smoke and something sweeter, more insidious, an aroma that draws wary travelers like moths to a flame. But beware, for in this tale the flame consumes far more than wings. Picture the year 1888. America is in the throes of its Gilded Age, a time of glittering progress masking the rot beneath. Railroads spiderweb across the nation, carrying dreams and desperados alike. In Kentucky, the echoes of the Civil War still linger like gunpowder in the air. Brother against brother, feuds that bleed into the soil. The infamous Hatfield-McCoy vendetta reaches its bloody crescendo that very year, with ambushes in the dead of night, families torn asunder by rifle fire and unquenchable hatred. Louisville buzzes with innovation, becoming the first city in the nation to adopt the secret ballot, a veil of anonymity that hides votes as surely as graves hide bones. But away from the cities, in the rural backwoods where the Ohio River murmurs ancient curses, life is a harsher beast. Train wrecks claim lives in mangled steel, earthquakes from decades past still rumble in folklore, and the people cling to their farms, their faith, and their firearms. It is here, in this crucible of isolation and ingenuity, that our story unfolds the macabre mystery of the Helms Hollow Inn. Nestled in a forgotten valley near the Cumberland Gap, a gateway to the west where pioneers once trudged with hope, only to find peril, we find the Harlow family. Elias Harlow, a gaunt man with eyes like polished obsidian, inherited the inn from his forebears, whispers of whom trace back to the wilder days of Kentucky's frontier. But this was no ordinary roadside haven. Travelers spoke in hushed tones of the meals served there, stews so rich they melted on the tongue, pies with crusts that flaked like autumn leaves, gravies that clung to the palate with an unnatural savor. The best damn food this side of the Mississippi, they'd say, if they ever left to tell the tale. Yet, for every guest who praised the hospitality, others vanished like mist at dawn. Wagons abandoned on muddy trails, horses wandering riderless through the underbrush. Locals avoided the inn after dusk, crossing themselves at the mention of its name. Rumors slithered through taverns and churchyards, strange lights in the windows, cries muffled by the wind, and an odor, not just of cooking fat, but something metallic, primal, like blood congealing on cold stone. What if I told you that the secret ingredient in those legendary meals was not some heirloom spice or forbidden herb, but something far more grotesque? Human fat, rendered from the bodies of the unwitting, dripped into pots and skillets to infuse every bite with a forbidden essence. Feel the chill now as we peel back the layers. This is no mere ghost story, though spirits surely haunt these pages. It's a descent into the heart of human depravity, where survival twists into savagery, and the line between host and predator blurs in the flickering hearthlight. Kentucky's folklore is rife with such shadows. The Bell Witch tormenting families across the border in Tennessee. Her poltergeist antics a mere prelude to deeper horrors. The Pope Lick monster, that goat man abomination luring thrill seekers to their doom on treacherous trestles, or the Grey Lady of Liberty Hall, a spectral widow whose grief echoes through Frankfort's historic halls since the early 1800s. But Helms Hollow Inn draws from an even darker vein. Legends of cannibals in the Appalachians, whispered tales of blugums, inbred clans with azure, tinted gums who preyed on strangers in the misty mountains, their hunger born of isolation and madness. And then there's Boone Helm, the infamous Kentucky cannibal, born in Lincoln County in 1828, a man whose appetite for flesh carried him westward to a noose in Montana in 1864. Helm devoured companions in the snowbound wilds, boasting of the sweetness of human meat. Was Elias Harlow a distant kin carrying that cursed bloodline? Or did the inn's horrors spring from the soil itself, fertilized by the blood of earlier atrocities like those of the Harp brothers, Kentucky's first serial killers in the late 1700s who slaughtered travelers along the wilderness roads? As we step into this narrative, let the atmosphere envelop you. Hear the creak of floorboards under unseen feet, smell the greasy smoke curling from the chimney, taste the bile rising in your throat at the thought of what simmers in the kitchen. This is the shadow behind you, growing longer as the night deepens. Stay close, listeners. The tale begins, and once started, it may never let you go. The year was 1888, and the autumn leaves in Kentucky's Appalachian foothills burned like embers against the gray sky. Helms Hollow lay tucked between two jagged ridges, a place where the sun seemed reluctant to linger, casting long shadows even at noon. The inn itself was a squat, two-story structure of weathered logs and stone, its roof sagging under the weight of years and secrets. A sign creaked in the wind, Helms Hollow Inn, rest for the weary soul. But souls found little rest there. Elias Harlow was the patriarch, a man in his 50s whose frame spoke of hard labor and harder sins. His skin was taut over sharp bones, like parchment stretched on a frame, and his beard, streaked with gray, hid a mouth that rarely smiled. Born in the aftermath of the Civil War's scars, Elias had seen his father hang for horse thieving, a spectacle that twisted something inside him. He married young to Abigail, a woman with hair like raven feathers and eyes that held the chill of winter streams. Together, they raised 3 children: Silas, the eldest at 25, broad-shouldered and silent, Eliza 19, with a beauty that masked a feral cunning, and young Caleb, barely 16, whose innocence was already fraying at the edges. The family had run the inn for generations, tracing back to the early 1800s when Kentucky's taverns dotted the stagecoach routes like beads on a string. Places like the Old Talbot Tavern in Bardstown or the Gaines Tavern in Walton served as lifelines for travelers, offering all, beds, and tales by the fire. But Helms Hollow was different. Isolated from the main trails, it drew those who strayed. Prospectors chasing cold dreams, peddlers with wagons of trinkets, families fleeing debts or feuds. The Harlows welcomed them all with open arms and steaming plates. It began subtly, as such horrors often do. In the winter of 1887, a harsh frost gripped the hollow and game grew scarce. Elias, hunting in the snow-draped woods, stumbled upon a frozen traveler dead from exposure. The man's body, plump from city living, lay preserved in the drifts. Hunger gnawed at Elias like a living thing, remembering tales from his youth of Boone Helm, a distant cousin whose cannibal feats were whispered around campfires. He made a choice. He dragged the body home, and under the cover of night, rendered the fat in the kitchen's great iron pot. The air filled with a sickly sweet aroma, not unlike pork, but richer, more intoxicating. Abigail protested at first, her hands trembling as she stirred the pot. But when they mixed it into the cornbread and served it to their children, something shifted. The food tasted divine, a flavor that lingered on the tongue, banishing the pangs of starvation. The children ate heartily, their eyes glazing with unnatural satisfaction. From that night, the inn's meals transformed. Travelers raved about the secret recipe, unaware that the gravy's gloss came from human essence. The first deliberate victim was a lone salesman named Jeremiah Tate, arriving in early spring 1888. Tate, a portly man from Cincinnati with a mustache waxed to points, boasted of his wares, patent medicines that cured all ills. He dined alone in the common room, the fire crackling as Eliza served him a heaping plate of stew. The meat was tender, the broth thick with fat that coated his lips. "By God, miss, this is ambrosia!" he exclaimed, wiping his chin. That night, as Tate slept in the upstairs chamber, Silas crept in with a hatchet. The blow was swift, the blood mopped with rags. They dragged the body to the cellar, a dank space carved into the hillside, where Elias wielded his butcher's knife with practiced ease. The fat was skimmed and stored in jars, the bones ground for fertilizer in the garden, the flesh, well, some say it found its way into the pies. though the Harlows swore they drew the line at outright cannibalism. It was the fat that mattered, the essence that made their food irresistible, drawing more victims like flies to honey. Word spread cautiously. In nearby towns like Corbin or Barberville, folks spoke of the inn's hospitality, but with a wary eye. Don't linger after dark, an old-timer might mutter in a saloon. Strange things happen in Helm's Hollow, yet the allure was too strong. A family of settlers, the Millers, arrived in June, their wagon laden with hopes for a new life out west. Pamela, his wife, and 2 young daughters savored the meal, the girls giggling at the richness of the biscuits. By morning, their wagon stood empty, horses gone, and the family vanished. Locals found tracks leading into the woods, but no bodies, only a peculiar slickness on the leaves, like grease from a skillet. Tension built as summer waned. Elias grew bolder, sending Silas to waylay travelers on the trails, luring them with tales of shortcuts. Abigail, once reluctant, now hummed hymns as she rendered the fat, her faith twisted into a dark ritual. "The Lord provides," she'd whisper, quoting scripture while her hands dripped with viscera. Eliza, blooming into womanhood, used her charms to disarm guests, her laughter a siren's call. Only Caleb hesitated, his dreams haunted by screams and the metallic tang of blood. One fateful night in August, a sheriff from Lexington named Harlan Crow rode into the hollow. Crow was investigating disappearances along the road, his badge glinting in the lantern light. Tall and stern, with a scar from the war, he eyed the family suspiciously as he ate. The stew was exquisite, but something nagged at him, the flavor too perfect, too unnatural. As he retired, he clutched his revolver under the pillow. In the witching hour, Silas approached, but Crow was ready. A scuffle ensued, shots echoing through the inn. Silas fell wounded, blood pooling on the floorboards. Crow burst into the kitchen, where Elias and Abigail stood over a simmering pot. The sheriff's eyes widened at the jars lining the shelves, labeled with dates and names. Tate, Miller others. What in God's name? He gasped, the air thick with the forbidden scent. But the family was quick. Eliza struck from behind with a poker, and Crow crumpled. They dragged him to the cellar, where he awoke bound, the knife glinting. "Why?" he croaked. Elias leaned close, his breath hot. "Because the fat makes it all worthwhile. It binds us, sustains us. Taste it, and you'll understand." As the blade descended, the hollow seemed to hold its breath, the wind whispering through the trees like the sighs of the damned. With Sheriff Crow's disappearance, the shadows over Helm's Hollow deepened, coiling like smoke from a hidden fire. The Harlows knew scrutiny would come, whispers in Lexington taverns, posters nailed to trees seeking the lawman. Elias burned Crow's belongings in the hearth, the flames devouring his badge like a sacrificial offering. But the fat from the sheriff was potent, infused with the essence of authority and resolve. Mixed into their meals, it lent a boldness to the family's actions, as if they absorbed his strength. Silas recovered slowly, his wound a puckered scar that ached in the damp. He grew more savage, patrolling the woods with a rifle, his silence broken only by guttural grunts. Abigail retreated into mania, murmuring prayers to a god who no longer listened, her hands raw from scrubbing bloodstains that never truly faded. Eliza embraced the darkness fully, her beauty a weapon honed sharp. She danced alone in the moonlight, imagining the souls of the slain twirling with her. Caleb, the youngest, teetered on the brink, his conscience a fragile thread, frayed by the nightly horrors. Autumn brought a surge of travelers fleeing the escalating Hatfield. McCoy feud across the border in West Virginia. The New Year's ambush earlier that year had spilled into Kentucky's consciousness, tales of burning cabins and midnight raids fueling paranoia. One such group arrived at the inn, the Whitaker clan, 4 brothers hardened by vendettas, seeking passage west. Burly men with beards like brambles, they demanded rooms and food, their pistols laid openly on the table. The meal was a masterpiece, roast venison glazed with the forbidden fat, potatoes fried to golden perfection, apple pie that wept juice. The Whitakers ate voraciously, their suspicions lulled by the intoxicating flavors. "This here's finer than my's cookin'," one grunted, licking his fingers. As night fell, the brothers retired, their snores rumbling through the walls. Elias signaled, and the family struck. Silas and Eliza crept upstairs, hatchets raised. But the Whittakers were no easy prey. A floorboard creaked, and chaos erupted. Gunfire shattered the silence, bullets splintering wood. One brother fell to Silas's blade, his throat a red smile, but another winged Eliza, blood blooming on her dress. Downstairs, Abigail barred the door as Elias reloaded his shotgun. The fight spilled into the yard, lanterns swinging wildly. Caleb, hidden in the shadows, watched in horror as a Whittaker brother grappled with his father, knives flashing. A scream pierced the night. Abigail, struck down by a stray shot, her body crumpling like a discarded rag. Elias roared, blasting the assailant point blank, the fat from past victims spattering like unholy rain. By dawn, 3 Whittakers lay dead, the 4th fleeing into the woods, wounded. The Harlows buried their mother in the garden, her grave unmarked save for a twisted root. Eliza's wound festered, fever claiming her beauty, turning her skin sallow. Silas hunted the survivor, tracking blood trails through the underbrush, but the man vanished, perhaps succumbing to his injuries or carrying tales to distant ears. The inn grew quieter, the family's unity fracturing. Elias drank heavily, the moonshine burning his throat like guilt. Caleb confronted him one stormy night, rain lashing the windows. "This ain't right, Pa." The screams, "I hear em in my sleep." Elias backhanded him, eyes wild. "It's survival, boy. The world takes, so we take back. Boone Helm knew it. Eat or be eaten." But the haunting events escalated. Guests reported apparitions. A portly shadow in the common room, echoing Tate's laughter, childish giggles from empty chambers, the Miller girls at play. Crow appeared to Caleb, a spectral figure with a gaping throat, whispering accusations. The cellar door creaked open on its own, releasing the stench of decay. Abigail's voice hummed from the kitchen, even as her body rotted in the earth. In November, a final traveler arrived. A preacher named Reverend Thorne, gaunt and fervent, seeking shelter from a blizzard. His eyes pierced like augers as he dined, the fat-laced soup failing to seduce him. "There's evil here," he intoned, pushing the bowl away. That night, as Silas approached, Thorne awoke, Bible in hand. "Demons, I see your sins!" he cried, flinging holy water that sizzled on Silas's skin. The struggle was fierce. Thorne fought with righteous fury, stabbing Elias in the shoulder before Silas subdued him. In the cellar, as they prepared the body, a tremor shook the inn, echoes of the New Madrid earthquakes or something supernatural. The pot overturned, fat spilling like blood igniting on the coals. Flames licked the walls, the fire spreading with unnatural speed. The family fled into the snow, the inn blazing behind them. Caleb, seizing the moment, turned on his kin. "No more," he whispered, raising a hidden pistol. Shots rang out. Silas fell. Elias clutched his chest. As the flames consumed the structure, Caleb vanished into the storm, the last Harlow. Haunted by the legacy, the ruins smoldered for days, locals approaching warily. They found charred bones in the cellar, jars shattered, the truth seeping into the soil. But no bodies of the family. Only whispers that they roamed the hollows still, hungry shadows seeking sustenance. To understand the macabre mystery of Helm's Hollow Inn, we must delve into the historical and cultural tapestry of 1888 Kentucky, where fact and folklore intertwine like vines choking an ancient oak. This was a state forged in the fires of frontier life, its soil soaked in the blood of Native American conflicts, revolutionary skirmishes, and the brutal divisions of the Civil War. Kentucky, admitted to the Union in 1792 as the first state west of the Appalachians, embodied the American dream's darker underbelly, opportunity laced with peril. The late 19th century saw Kentucky grappling with Reconstruction's aftermath. The Gilded Age brought railroads and industry, but rural areas remained isolated, bound by dirt roads and riverways. Inns and taverns were vital, serving as social hubs, post offices, and courtrooms. Historic sites like the Old Stone Inn in Simpsonville, built in the early 1800s, or the Offutt Coal Tavern in Woodford County, established in 1802, hosted luminaries from Daniel Boone to Abraham Lincoln. These establishments offered respite, but also bred vice, gambling, duels, and disappearances. In 1888, a train wreck in Ohio County claimed lives, symbolizing the era's precarious progress, while Louisville's adoption of the secret ballot hinted at corruption's grip. The Hatfield-McCoy feud, peaking with the 1888 New Year's ambush, exemplified Kentucky's culture of vendettas. Families like the Hatfields and McCoys, straddling the Kentucky-West Virginia border, turned personal slights into generational warfare, mirroring the isolation that could breed monstrosity in places like Helms Hollow. Archaeological digs, like those uncovering artifacts from the McCoy cabin, reveal the everyday terror of such times. Folklore amplified these realities. Kentucky's legends are a brew of European immigrant tales, African-American spirituals, and Native American lore. The Bell Witch haunting the Bell family in nearby Tennessee from 1817-1821 involved poltergeists, animal mimicry, and prophecies, elements that echo the supernatural disturbances at the inn. Closer to home, the Pope-Lick monster of Fisherville, a half-man, half-goat entity luring victims to train deaths since the 19th century, speaks to fears of the unknown in rural landscapes. Sleepy Hollow Road in Prospect harbors tales of a headless woman, her spirit tied to 19th century tragedies, while the Witch's Tree in Louisville, twisted by a lightning strike in 1889, became a site for occult rituals after a coven curse. Cannibalism legends add an eerie layer. Boone Helm, the Kentucky cannibal, born in 1828, embodied this horror. Descended from Daniel Boone's kin, Helm murdered and ate victims across the West, confessing to devouring a companion's leg with relish. Hanged in 1864, his story persisted in Kentucky folklore, warning of the savagery lurking in human hearts. Appalachian tales of blue gums, cannibal clans with blue-tinted gums from inbreeding, circulated in the 19th century, rooted in isolation and famine. These stories blended with real atrocities like the Harp brothers' rampage in the 1790s, slaughtering dozens along Kentucky's rivers, their crimes including infanticide and disembowelment. Cultural trauma fueled such myths. Post-Civil War Kentucky saw economic disparity, with sharecroppers starving while bourbon barons thrived. Famines, like those in the 1880s due to droughts, pushed boundaries of morality. Religious fervor, from Methodist camp meetings to Baptist revivals, clashed with superstition. Preachers like Reverend Thorne decrying demonic acts, yet folklore suggesting divine punishment for sins. Blend this with universal fears, the stranger in a strange land, the betrayal of hospitality. In Greek mythology, the Laestrygonians were cannibal giants. In American lore, the Donner Party's 1846 ordeal normalized survival cannibalism. Kentucky's version, amplified by oral traditions, created an unsettling authenticity. Was Helms Hollow real? Perhaps not, but echoes exist. The Pearl Bryan murder of 1896, where a pregnant woman was decapitated near Fort Thomas, her head never found, fueled headless ghost tales. Or the unsolved killing of Transylvania student Betty Gale Brown in 1961, but rooted in earlier mysteries. This context paints a picture of a land where the macabre was mundane, legends lending credence to horrors like the inns. It educates while chilling, reminding us that history's shadows are long and folklore's grip unyielding. Beneath the gore of Helms Hollow Inn lies a labyrinth of symbolic and psychological depths, connecting to universal fears, cultural traumas, and the abyss of human nature. This tale isn't mere sensationalism. It's a mirror reflecting our darkest impulses, shrouded in an ominous intellectual veil. Symbolically, the human fat represents the essence of exploitation, the literal consumption of others for sustenance and pleasure. In a gilded age of industrial cannibalism, where robber barons devoured workers' lives for profit, the Harlows embody this metaphor. Their meals, irresistible yet tainted, symbolize addiction to forbidden knowledge or power, akin to the apple in Eden. The fat's rendering process mirrors alchemy, transforming base matter, death, into gold as culinary ecstasy, but at the cost of the soul. Psychologically, the family dynamics reveal Freudian undercurrents. Elias, the patriarchal Ed, driven by primal hunger; Abigail, the superego twisted into complicity through rationalized faith; the children as ego, navigating inheritance of sin. Caleb's rebellion echoes Oedipal conflict, slaying the father to break the cycle. Isolation breeds this madness. Appalachian hollows as worms of regression, where societal norms dissolve, birthing Jungian shadows, the repressed savage within civilized man. Universal fears abound: the violation of hospitality, a taboo since ancient times, Odysseus and the Cyclops. Travelers trust inns as sanctuaries, but betrayal taps into xenophobia, the stranger as threat. Cannibalism evokes ultimate othering, reducing humans to meat, challenging identity. In Kentucky's context, this ties to post-war trauma, divided loyalties fostering paranoia, feuds like Hatfield, McCoy manifesting collective guilt. Culturally, the story probes American exceptionalism's dark side. The frontier myth of self-reliance twists into survivalism, justifying atrocities. Boone Helm's legend exemplifies this. Kentucky's son-turned-monster, his cannibalism a perversion of pioneer grit. Folklore like Blugham's reflects stereotypes of Appalachian backwardness, a trauma from external exploitation, as coal mining stripping the land, mirroring the inn's stripping of bodies. Thematically, it explores inheritance-cursed bloodlines, as in Gothic literature, Poe's Fall of the House of Usher. The Harlow's descent from Helm suggests generational sin, echoing slavery's legacy in Kentucky, where emancipation didn't erase chains. Hauntings symbolize unresolved trauma, ghosts as manifestations of guilt, refusing burial. Human nature's duality shines through, the veneer of civilization cracking under pressure. In famine or isolation, morality erodes, as in Lord of the Flies. The inn's allure questions free will. Do victims choose their fate through gluttony? Or is it predestined, a Calvinist horror in Baptist Kentucky? Ominously, this connects to modern fears: serial killers like Jeffrey Dahmer echoing cannibal motifs, or corporate consumption. In capitalism, the tale warns that shadows lurk in us all, waiting for the right hollow to emerge. As the embers of our tale fade, dear listeners, the shadow of Helm's Hollow Inn lingers, a chill that seeps into your bones like winter fog. We've traversed the macabre paths of 1888 Kentucky, where a family's inn became a charnel house, their meals laced with the unspeakable. Elias and his kin, driven by hunger and heritage, rendered horror into hospitality, leaving a trail of vanished souls and spectral echoes. Yet, questions persist: did Caleb truly escape, or does he wander still, a haunted remnant perpetuating the curse? Are the ruins of the inn, lost to time, a portal where the wind carries whispers of the damned? Kentucky's history assures us such darkness endures. The feuds, the folklore, the forgotten graves. In closing, remember, the next inviting light on a lonely road may hide more than warmth. Taste carefully, for some flavors never leave the palate. Sleep well if you can. The shadow behind you, it hungers.